There is a room at almost every major airport in the world that most people will never see. No windows facing the terminal, no passengers walking past, no announcements, just screens and silence, and one person watching. Tonight that person is Elena Vasquez, 11 years in air traffic control, over 40,000 hours of managed airspace, a controller so good that her colleagues call her the machine. And at 2:47 in the morning, on what should have been the quietest shift of her week, Elena sees something on her radar that makes her go completely still. She doesn't reach for her radio immediately. She doesn't call her supervisor. She just stares at the screen for 3 seconds. In air traffic control, 3 seconds of stillness is an eternity. And what she was looking at, what she was processing in those 3 seconds, was the beginning of a sequence of events that investigators would later describe as a coincidence so unlikely it would not have been believed if it hadn't been documented. A true aviation story. Tonight I'm going to take you inside a night that 340 people have no idea they survived. A night when 3 aircraft, 1 broken radar, 1 silent radio, and 1 exhausted human being all ended up in the same 7-minute window of time. And the only reason you've never heard about it is because of what Elena did next. Let's start at the beginning. By 2 a.m. at a mid-size regional airport, the world has essentially gone to sleep. The last departure was 2 hours ago. Ground crews are running overnight maintenance. The terminal cleaners are moving through the empty gates with floor polishers, the sound echoing off the windows. Upstairs, in the combined TRACON facility, Terminal Radar Approach Control, the overnight skeleton crew is doing what overnight controllers do. Watching. Waiting. Staying sharp. Elena had come on shift at 8 p.m. By 2 a.m., she'd been working for 6 hours. Standard, within regulation, nothing unusual. But here's something they don't tell you about air traffic control fatigue. It's not like regular tiredness. Regular tiredness makes you want to sleep. A TC fatigue is different. It makes your brain feel sharp, while actually getting slower. Controllers describe it as feeling completely in control, right up until the moment they make a mistake they can't explain. It's one of the most dangerous forms of cognitive impairment in any profession. Elena knew this. She'd trained on it. She monitored herself for it. She didn't think it was affecting her tonight. At 2:41 a.m., 3 aircraft were in her airspace. Flight 447, a regional jet, a Bombardier CRJ-900 operating for a major carrier, 68 passengers, on approach from the northwest, 14 miles out. Flight 82, a wide-body Airbus A321, 181 passengers, just handed off to Elena from the en route center, descending from the east, 22 miles out. And cargo flight Sierra Tango 6, a FedEx feeder, turboprop, no passengers. 8 miles out on a straight-in approach, 3 aircraft, 3 separate corridors, all sequenced, all nominal. Elena had run more complex traffic than this on busy afternoons with 4 times the workload. This was not a difficult night. Or it wasn't, until she looked at the upper left corner of her screen. And that's when it started. Flight 82, the A321 from the east, had disappeared. Not faded, not moved to an unexpected position. Gone. One moment it was there, 22 miles out, descending through 8,000 feet. Data tag reading perfectly. Speed, altitude, call sign, transponder code. The next moment, nothing. Empty airspace, as if the plane had never existed. Elena did not panic. This is important, because every instinct in a human being says, panic. Instead, she did 3 things in approximately 4 seconds. She checked the transponder code manually. She cross-referenced the flight's last known position with her paper strip, the physical flight progress strip that controllers still use as a backup, and she keyed her radio. Eagle 82, radar contact lost. Confirm position and altitude. Static. She tried again. Nothing. Now, a critical thing to understand. Losing radar contact with an aircraft does not automatically mean something is wrong with the aircraft. Radar contact can be lost for a dozen reasons. A transponder glitch, a temporary terrain shadow, a data processing hiccup. Elena knew this, but losing radar contact and radio contact simultaneously? That combination has a name in aviation. It's the combination that controllers train for in the worst-case scenarios. And it had just happened. At 2:43 a.m., with an Airbus carrying 181 people descending toward her airport through the dark. But here's what Elena didn't know yet. The real problem hadn't appeared yet. She turned back to her screen, and Flight 82 reappeared. But it was in the wrong place, 6 miles west of where it should have been. And the altitude tag was reading 4,200 feet. Elena stared at that number. 4,200 feet. If Flight 82 was actually at 4,200 feet and 6 miles west, it was not in its cleared corridor anymore. It was in the approach path of Flight 447. Elena immediately called Flight 447. Eagle 447. Confirm your altitude. The pilot responded instantly. Clear, calm, professional. Eagle 447 is through 5,000, descending to 3,000, on glide path. She called Flight 82 again, still nothing. She tried the guard frequency, the emergency channel that all aircraft are required to monitor. Any aircraft on guard? Eagle 82, respond immediately. Silence. And then, her radar screen did something she had never seen in 11 years. It stuttered. The screen scrambled, recovered, and when it came back, the position data had shifted. Not wildly, not obviously, just enough. Enough that Elena couldn't be certain which data was current and which data was lagged. She was now managing 3 aircraft in an active airspace, with 1 radio silent, 1 showing anomalous position data, and a radar system she could no longer fully trust. She had approximately 4 minutes before the first aircraft reached the runway threshold, and her supervisor still hadn't picked up. This is the moment, investigators would later say, where a less experienced controller might have frozen. Elena didn't freeze, but what she did next, no one in that facility would have predicted. Janet, talk to me. Elena didn't look away from the screen. 82 is Nordo, radar intermittent, position data unreliable. I have 447 on a 4-mile final, 82 unknown. Sierra Tango 6 miles out and nominal. Janet looked at the screen. 3 seconds of silence. Janet, can you confirm 82's altitude? No. The standard vertical separation between aircraft is 1,000 feet. At the speeds these aircraft were flying, 250 to 280 knots on approach. A 1,000-foot altitude difference buys you about 45 seconds of safety margin if they're on converging paths. 45 seconds. Elena had already run this math. If Flight 82 was genuinely at 4,200 feet and on the heading implied by its position, and if 447 continued its normal descent, they would reach minimum separation in approximately 3 minutes. Not a collision. Not necessarily. But minimum separation, the legal, safety-critical floor, would be breached. And she couldn't confirm where 82 actually was. She keyed the radio to 447. Her voice was calm, completely, professionally calm. Eagle 447, I need you to confirm. Are you visual with any other traffic? Pilot of 447. Negative. No traffic in sight. Elena exhaled through her nose. Then the secondary radar system, the backup they'd switched to when the primary started flickering, gave her a reading on Flight 82. And the reading made no sense. 6,100 feet. 2 minutes ago it read 4,200. Before that, it had disappeared entirely. "The radar is lying to me," Elena said. Not dramatically, not as a complaint, as a statement of operational fact. And that was the moment Elena stopped trying to use the broken system and started building a picture from scratch. No radar, no reliable radio on one aircraft. 4 minutes to first landing. Elena went back to basics. Not the basics of a beginner. The basics of someone who is trained for exactly this scenario and knows that the tools are just tools. The job is to keep aircraft separated. She called Flight 82 one more time on guard frequency. Nothing. She called Sierra Tango 6, the cargo plane, which had been quiet and nominal this entire time. "Sierra Tango 6, I need your eyeballs. Report any traffic you can see ahead of you or above you. Any lights, any aircraft." The cargo crew responded. "We've got a set of landing lights at our 10 o'clock. Looks like descending traffic. Maybe 3 miles?" That was it. That was the piece she needed. If Flight 82 was at Sierra Tango 6's 10 o'clock, 3 miles, it was north of 447's approach corridor. Not intersecting, not a conflict. But Elena couldn't confirm the altitude, and she still had no radio contact. She made the first call. "Eagle 447, maintain current speed and descent. You are cleared to land runway 22. Traffic is coordinated." Then she turned to the light gun. If you've never heard of the light gun, here's what it is. It's the oldest safety tool in aviation. Before radio, before radar, before any of it, pilots and controllers communicated with colored light signals. Steady green, flashing green, steady red. It's so fundamental that every pilot in the world is tested on light gun signals as part of their basic certification. And most of them will never use it in their career. Elena aimed the light gun into the darkness in the direction the cargo crew had indicated. Steady green. 3 pulses. She waited. 8 seconds passed. Janet was standing behind her, not speaking, not interfering. 8 seconds in this room felt like 8 minutes. Then, the landing lights of a distant aircraft rocked. Left. Right. Left. The pilot's acknowledgement. The signal that goes back generations in aviation. "I see you. I understand." Elena let out one breath, then immediately turned back to 447. "Eagle 447, you are clear. Winds 220 at 8. Runway 22. You are number 1 to land. Flight 447, touchdown at 2:54 a.m. 7 minutes after Elena first saw the anomaly on her radar. Flight 8-2, the silent, position-uncertain Airbus, came in 3 minutes later. Elena had kept Sierra Tango 6 in a holding pattern to the south, adding distance, buying time, removing it from the equation. Flight 82 broke out of the cloud base at 800 feet on a stable, centered approach. The crew was unaware that anyone had been looking for them. They touched down without incident. Sierra Tango 6 landed 11 minutes later. Nominal. Unremarkable. 340 people. 3 aircraft. 1 runway. 7 minutes of managed chaos. "All traffic safe," she said it flatly. The way you say something you have needed to say for a very long time. Her relief controller arrived at 3:15 a.m. Elena briefed her, completed her logs, and walked out of the facility into a parking lot where the sky was beginning to show the very earliest gray light of pre-dawn. She drove home. She did not make a phone call. She did not post anything. She went to sleep, and 340 people did the same, none of them knowing a single thing had happened. 6 days later, the facility's safety review board convened. Because in aviation, even a successful outcome, maybe especially a successful outcome, triggers a formal investigation. The question isn't just, did anyone get hurt? The question is, why did the conditions exist for someone to get hurt? And what they found over the next 6 weeks was, frankly, disturbing. The primary radar failure was not a surprise. It had been flagged. 3 months before the incident, a routine maintenance inspection had identified degradation in the primary radar's processing unit. The recommendation was clear: replace within 90 days. The part had been ordered. It had been delayed. A supply chain issue. The kind of invisible bureaucratic failure that no single person caused and no single person noticed. The degraded component had been left in place. That was discovery number 1. Discovery number 2 was stranger. Flight 82's radio failure was investigated separately. And here's what they found. The aircraft's VHF communications antenna had been showing intermittent faults for 2 weeks. Logged. Reviewed. Cleared for flight each time because the fault was intermittent, meaning it passed inspection on the ground, but degraded in the air, particularly during descent, when aerodynamic forces on the antenna changed the electrical contact pattern. The crew of Flight 82 had been experiencing degraded radio reception for the last 40 miles of their flight. They had not declared an emergency because from their perspective, their radio was working, intermittently, but working. They were receiving partial transmissions. They didn't know Elena was trying to reach them. 2 separate components, 2 separate failure histories, both degrading toward failure simultaneously on the same night, in the same 7-minute window. The investigators used a phrase in their final report that I think about every time I step on a plane. They called it a cascading coincidence, not disaster, not negligence by any single person. A sequence of individually acceptable failures that combined into something that was almost catastrophic. And the reason it wasn't catastrophic, the reason 340 people went home, was not the radar, not the radio, not the protocols. It was one person, with 11 years of experience, who understood that when the tools fail, the job doesn't. The investigators issued 4 formal recommendations: mandatory tracking systems for deferred maintenance items, updated protocols for simultaneous radar and radio loss, additional staffing requirements for overnight TRACON shifts, and a requirement that light gun proficiency be retested every 2 years, not just during initial certification. All 4 were adopted. 6 months after the incident, Elena agreed to speak to the facility's internal safety training program, not to media, not publicly. She said something that has stayed with investigators, trainers, and controllers ever since. She was asked, "At what point did you feel most uncertain?" She said, "When the radar came back and showed me 82 at 6,100 feet, after showing me 4,200. That's when I felt uncertain. Because I didn't know which reading to trust. And if you don't know which reading to trust, you can't trust either of them. So I had to let go of the screen." She paused. That's the hardest thing to do. The screen is the job. But sometimes, the screen is the problem. And you have to be willing to put the screen down and use what you know. She was also asked, "Were you scared?" Another pause. I didn't have time to be scared. I had time to work. Here is the thing about aviation safety that I keep coming back to. It is the safest form of long-distance travel ever created. Statistically, historically, undeniably. In 2023, commercial aviation carried over 4.5 billion passengers. The fatal accident rate was 0.07 per million flights. 0.07. That number is not a gift. It is not luck. It is not engineering alone. It is not just the planes or the protocols or the redundant systems. It is 11,000 air traffic controllers in the United States alone and tens of thousands more around the world, sitting in dim rooms, watching green screens, making thousands of decisions per shift in real time, with consequences they can never fully calculate. And the definition of success in that job, the highest possible achievement, is that nothing happens. No news, no headlines, no names. Just 340 people landing safely, picking up their bags, and going home. Elena Vasquez still works in air traffic control. She doesn't have a documentary. She doesn't have a Wikipedia page. She doesn't have a statue. She has a workstation, a headset, and a shift that starts at 8 p.m. And somewhere, right now, there is a version of Elena in every city in the world, watching, working, keeping the sky in order, completely invisible, exactly as they should be. If you've never thought about the person who cleared your last flight to land, think about it now. And if this story meant something to you, share it, because the people who keep us safe deserve at minimum to be seen,